Well, here we are, more than a year since we last gathered together in this holy place. I think that we have come to better understand just how special this place is because we miss it, and we anticipate that we will be together in all good time. Yet wherever we are today, we know that God is in our very midst, and wherever we are, it is a place of love. And so we gather on this, the fifth Sunday in Lent. This Lenten season, we've been considering a somewhat different approach. We talked about what we might give up for Lent, which is what people customarily do. We talked about fasting. We talked about that making room to take on something, to feast as we live into our call as followers of Jesus and a people of peace, service, and openness to all. What, we ask, will draw us closer to God and to one another on this journey with Jesus? Fasting from worry and feasting on hope and promise was the theme for week 1. We were reminded by Dr. Seuss, no less, that today you are you, that is truer than true. There is no one alive who's youer than you. You are God's beloved, and you are enough. Week 2, Pastor Eric helped us to think about fasting from work and feasting on play. We asked ourselves, if play is good for us, what would it take to reawaken and to reactivate our playful side? What would play look like if we didn't take ourselves too seriously, if we were a little bit more childlike? Week 3, Naomi tapped into our inspirations as we considered fasting from certainty and feasting on creativity and imagination. We heard about the monarch chrysalis, which holds inside imaginal discs that help to create, nurture, and bring forth a stunningly beautiful butterfly, new life and resurrection. And last Sunday, the fourth Sunday in Lent, Pastor Jason encouraged us to practice simplicity as we considered how we might fast from stuff and how we might feast on simple living, simplicity, which is a core value in our own tradition. And that brings us to today, the fifth Sunday in Lent, as we consider fasting from technology and feasting on God's good creation. Have you ever been nervous or stressed because you forgot to take your phone with you when you left home? I have. Have you ever turned around and driven home just to get your phone? I have. Have you ever promised yourself that you put your cell phone down only to find yourself checking it mindlessly anyhow? I have. You know, I learned a new word this week. You may know it. It's nomophobia. It's the official term for cell phone addiction, a rising issue in modern society among both the young and the old. It's across the generations. Nomophobia is the fear of being separated from our phone, our mobile phone. So let's stop for a moment and remember, how did we get here? It wasn't always this way. You know, I remember as a young bride, we had one telephone with a dial on it. It hung on the wall with a short cord connected to the receiver. It was impossible to walk more than a couple of feet in any direction, so we were pretty well tethered to the wall when talking on the phone. And to save a little bit of money, ours was a party line, no less. For those of you who have never experienced a party line, that means that more than one household could be served by the line, so that nosy neighbor could potentially listen in on your conversation. And it also meant that if they, or if I, left the phone off the hook unintentionally, that line was rendered useless until somebody hung up that receiver. And those were the days before answering machines or voicemail. It's really hard to imagine how we were even able to communicate. So fast forward just a couple of decades, with some budding young drivers in our family, we decided to purchase the newest technology, a car phone in a bag. It was literally a phone in a bag, and you'd lay it on the floor between the front seats. It had a curly cord that plugged into the cigarette lighter in the car, and it came with the basic plan: 20 minutes of airtime per month, intended only for absolutely necessary calls. In our wildest imaginations, it never occurred to us that this bag phone could be used for anything other than safety measure. How subtly it evolved and made its way into our everyday lives and has taken on a new role, a new function, the cell phone. And life has never been the same. Nomophobia is our is our reality. So consider these statistics. 66% of Americans check their phones a minimum of 160 times a day. Almost that same number of people admit to sleeping with their phones at night and say that they check them before even putting their feet on the floor in the morning. 32.7% say that they spend more time on their phones than in person with their partner or significant other. One study cited in the Wall Street Journal claims that the average young adult spends 11 and a half hours a day consuming media, and half of 18 and 19-year-olds are online almost constantly. And here's the alarming thing. Scientists have determined that our cortisol levels are elevated when our phone is in sight or nearby, or when we even think that we might be able to hear it. Cortisol is our body's main stress hormone, our primary fight or flight hormone that enables us to react to physical threats, and that's a good thing. Chronically elevated cortisol levels, however, have been tied to serious health problems, including depression, obesity, diabetes, fertility issues, high blood pressure, heart attack, dementia, and stroke. One author said that her smartphone was like a fly buzzing around in her head as she tried to read, write, listen, think, walk, eat, talk, and sleep. She finds it difficult to pay attention, real attention, she writes, to anything other than her smartphone for more than 5 minutes, and continues to say that today her attention span has been reduced noticeably. Maybe it's just me, she says, I don't know. But I'm not the only one staring at a phone at red lights. Well, this is unmarked territory for us. It really is a new thing, this relentless distraction. It can be exhausting and it can be downright unhealthy. And yet, we succumb. We know from scriptures that even Jesus' cortisol level rose. We're told that when the crowds pressed in and overwhelmed him, he withdrew to quiet places where he could pray, to recenter, to renew, to re-energize. And he invites all who are weary, carrying heavy loads, and we all do at one time or another. Join him, for his yoke is easy and his load is light. Consider the great wisdom in the words of the psalmist. It is in vain that you rise up early and go late to rest, eating the bread of anxious toil, for God gives sleep to his beloved. God doesn't want us to be anxious or exhausted, yet our phone can be a source of anxious toil that we may seldom unplug. According to the article, and get this title, How Giving Up Your Cell Phone for Lent is More Than an Act of Faith, one way to cure the problem can be digital detox, which involves disconnecting entirely from your phone, kind of going cold turkey. That's not always possible, though, or completely necessary. Here are just a few tips I found for taking a break from handheld technology. Sleep with your cell phone in another room. Even during waking hours, separate yourself from it physically. Put it in a different room so that checking it becomes an intended effort, not just a mindless habit. Set your phone to check social media twice a day, morning and evening. Schedule time for real-life socializing and replace Facebook with a face-to-face engagement, time spent with friends. Especially now that many people are vaccinated or soon will be, this is a real reality and we can spend time together safely. Don't check work email after 5 p.m. on Friday and before 8 a.m. on Monday. Turn off the distracting notifications. When we hear these signals, cortisol is automatically released into our bodies, and that is addictive. You know, cell phones and mobile devices are not inherently bad. They've made our lives much more productive in a myriad of ways. But as we unhook from technology, we might find ourselves cherishing the time we have for contemplation, meditation, creative endeavors, understanding that only by using technology when necessary and for a limited time, we regain our connection with the real world and all that it has to offer. And this is where the feasting part comes in. Last March, just 1 year ago, when the pandemic shut us down, when our orders were to stay at home, it seems that break in our normal routine afforded us the opportunity to spend more time out of doors in God's creation. More people were out walking in an effort not only to get out of the house, but also to get some much-needed exercise. And we found that God's creation was just coming back to life after a fairly mild winter. Here again, these words of the psalmist. The heavens praise your marvels, Lord. Yours are the heavens, yours the earth. You founded the world and everything in it. Don't you just love that word, marvel? When we have the space, the time to feast on God's creation, we find that it is a wonderful world, full of creativity beyond our imaginations, and indeed, we marvel. You know, it was 1 year ago that we noticed a female mallard duck hanging around our patio. There's a picture of Mama Duck. It didn't take long to realize that she was building a nest in the mulch tucked under a pyracantha vine. Day by day, her nest bowl took shape, and we quietly observed her fastidious work to create the perfect environment. And then came the really exciting part. Mama laid a clutch of eggs, 10 to be exact, 1 a day for 10 days. As she did so, she feathered the nest. We learned that she pulled downy feathers from her belly, which not only made the nest safe and soft, it left a bare spot on her tummy so that her body heat could warm the eggs as she sat on them. We learned that she constantly rotated the clutch so that each egg would have equal and adequate body heat. In the evenings, her partner would fly into our front yard, and she would fly away with him for what we imagined was maybe a nice dinner out. And about an hour later, they flew back into the yard, and he would quickly take off and leave her behind. And she would waddle past our patio dining table, back to her nest to continue her vigil. Finally, the big day came. It took all day for those 10 eggs to hatch. Mama kept tucking each new duckling, and you can see a couple right here alongside Mama Duck. She kept tucking them back under the down and into the protection of the nest. And they were still taking their time hatching when we went to bed. It was quite a production. We were eager to wake up the next morning and meet our flock in person. We woke up at the crack of dawn to check on our brood. Much to our disappointment, they were all gone. An empty nest full of down and broken eggshells. We imagined that during the night, once they had all hatched, Mama led them down to the creek at the foot of our hill, where they could safely grow and thrive in the reeds and the grasses as they paddled in the shallow creek waters. Our little clutch had flown its nest, just as it was created to do. The pandemic afforded us the luxury of watching this miracle of life unfold. And we were reminded that God cares for us like a mother hen, or here a mother duck cares for her brood, gathering her babies safely under her wings. What a marvel. And think of all there is to explore in God's creation. How much more there is waiting for us to discover that we just never see when we're distracted. According to the author of the book Crazy Love, did you know some crazy and marvelous facts about regular bugs? Consider the caterpillar. Not all that remarkable until you discover that each one has 228 muscles in its head. And how about the ordinary house spider? Did you know that they produce 3 kinds of silk when they're spinning webs? When they build their webs, they create 60 feet of silk in 1 hour. simultaneously producing special oil in their feet, and yes, all 8 of their feet, that prevents them from sticking to their own web. Not only can we marvel at God's creation, we can benefit physically. Scientific research says that spending time in nature is critical to health and increases longevity. Being in fresh air, under trees, away from cars and concrete and houses, taps into therapeutic benefits. The Japanese already know it. It's what they call forest bathing, and it's strongly linked to lower blood pressure, heart rate, and decreased anxiety, depression, and fatigue. Human anti-cancer natural killer cells significantly increase after a walk in the woods. Hormones cortisol as well as adrenaline significantly decrease. A walk in nature can make a world of difference to mood, creativity, the ability to use working memory. We are wondrously made, and how can we help but marvel? You know, we have this beautiful world that God so loves that is for our delight. God is here in our midst, and we are called to care for and love it too, and to feast on the marvel that it is, as we love the acorn, love the antelope, the butterfly and the boxer, the crustacean and the caterpillar, the donkey and the dragonfly, the elephant and the eel, the flycatcher and the fern, the giraffe and the gecko, the hummingbird and the heavens, the iguana and the isthmus, the jabberwocky and the jade, the kangaroo and the koala, the lemur and the louse, the manatee and the mallard, the nightingale and the North Pole, the otter and the ox, the peony and the pony, the quail and the quetzal, the rooster and the rutabaga, the spider and the snow geese, the tomcat and the tomato, the umbrella bird and the upright broom, the vulture and the vampire bat, the wallaby and the weevil, the X-ray tetra and the xerophyte, the yak and the yucca, the zucchini and the zebra. Again, we join in the words of the psalmist, O Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. When I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars that you have established, what are human beings that you are mindful of them, mortals that you care for them? Yet you have made them a little lower than God and crowned them with glory and honor. You have given them dominion over the works of your hands. You have put all things under their feet, all sheep and oxen, and also the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, and the fish of the sea, whatever passes along the paths of the seas. O Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. Amen.